Oh, hello there. Yes, well, we made it to Friday, I'm pleased to say. Yeah, we might actually, quietly today, not have quite so much about the Second World War. This says a lot about our politics, that it dominates everything, and people are desperate to own it. Probably my favourite moment yesterday was Tommy Robinson, who had the unfortunate thing whereby he posted an AI-generated image of people running away from the French coast, which didn't quite work for him. But Tommy, luckily, being a mature adult, knows everything about history, and that was very much in the news yesterday because the usual kind of notions that the Chinese Communist Party are seeking to undermine all of Western society by pushing disinformation through TikTok was definitely out in force. And, well, I might say to the Chinese Communist Party, because they're bound to be listening after all, is don't bother. GB News and the Telegraph and the Mail and the rest of them are just going to do that all by themselves. Yesterday we had a few surveys out, and I'm going to concentrate on one particular one in just a second, but we had Matt Goodwin, I think, which sort of typifies what was going on. So he has this kind of shock horror headline about how dreadful young people are. 58% of British Zoomers from Gen Z, say they don't know much or nothing at all about D-Day. I found this profoundly depressing. Our education system is failing. Yeah, you see, the fact that young people don't know anything, apparently, is a major failing in the education system. And which is fine if you want to sort of like think like that. And he posts up this chart saying that loads of young people say they don't know anything at all about D-Day, whereas loads of old people know everything there is to possibly know about all history at all times, about everything, which is great. And yeah, you can sort of go, oh, isn't it bad in the education system and young people? But when you take one step back and think, well, hang on a second, because I do that all the time. And then you think to yourself, well, young people don't know lots of things about lots of things, particularly history, because, they're young. And what's taught in school is dictated by our glorious government from the last 14 years, who hopefully will get back in to dictate to us some more. So it was very much a conservative view of history that these people are being taught. And yet they say that they don't know much. And then you think to yourself, well, it's one of those surveys where people are asked to rate the amount that they can themselves, what they can, it's self-reporting. So, people my age know pretty much a lot about D-Day. But I'm willing to bet that they don't, okay? Because half of the people my age are women, and they don't care about the Second World War. They don't have lots of books like blokes my age do about the Second World War. But though people that age probably do have a generalised knowledge about quite a bit of history, because you kind of pick it up as you get older. Think about all those people that win general knowledge quizzes, like those people that win Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. They're never 18, are they? And if you flip this over in terms of generational knowledge, I would suggest that if you do a survey of people my age and ask them to work out a frequency tree in maths, or indeed to properly label a Venn diagram, or indeed to work out the mean, median and mode of pretty much anything, they will look at you blankly because they don't know anything. And I blame the education system for that. No, I don't. It's just that it's not very much use in their life. When you think about these things on that kind of logical basis, things fall into place. And Matt, who's kind of like a gateway drug to GB News and everything else, might well find that profoundly depressing, but that's because he's the sort of person that doesn't really think about much. Talking of which, yesterday we had this very odd thing, which I spent most of yesterday trying to find out about, oddly enough. Unheard, who are one of those media organisations set up by a couple of people with defined definite business interests in GB News. And they heralded briefly yesterday, especially on GB News, there were a couple of segments about it, about this dreadful survey from Focal Data. You see, because they're focal, you see what they did? They're Focal Data, focus on the data, Focal Data, about asking various people about the conflict in Gaza, if I can put it as delicately as that. And they came out with some very, very odd numbers, which initially they flagged up, oh, isn't it dreadful? And GB News and then Aaron Bastani sort of arguing about it in his typically TikTok-style Chinese Communist Party way. But he basically, when he was being interviewed, went, well, I don't know, really. And that's exactly my feelings. Anyway, the odd thing about this is once that initial trail had been done and Unheard said that they were going to release more of the data yesterday, they haven't. So I'm left with picking up the pieces of what they've actually released. And there's only a couple of graphs to go by because there's nothing on the Focal Data site. There's nothing on Unheard's site. They just don't say anything about it at all, which leads me to believe that it's incredibly iffy, a bit like Matt Goodwin's one. So let's look at just the headline figure of this, okay? The idea that 18 to 24 years olds, 54% of them say that Israel should not exist. Isn't it dreadful that 54% of young people, when they're asked, should Israel exist, say no? Okay. But you then have to say to yourself, well, okay, I don't think they would, right? Because why would they say that the state of Israel shouldn't exist? Is Hamas propaganda so strong? And the answer is yes, it definitely is. But then you look down the graph at, for example, people in my age group. 16% of us lot, our boomery types, late period boomers, granted, but okay, say that Israel shouldn't exist as well. Now, you can't just say, oh, that's the Muslims, because there aren't enough of them in that age group. The total number of people interviewed for this was 1,012, which gives you about, if you're going to be really generous about it on a kind of adjusted for national levels, gives you about 150 people in the 18 to 24 age group, tops, maybe 80, yes, I'm being generous here. So you can see that it's not a huge sample, and there's a really good chance, if you've asked a pretty dodgy question, which we don't get to see, that you're going to end up with this. And I'm guessing that's what's going on there. Because Focal Data, bless them, as they proudly say on their website, are quite happy to give you the information you need. And I reckon that's what's gone on. But then someone's looked at this and thought, hang on, what's going on with the 16% there? It's a lot, and you can't really accuse 44-year-olds of being influenced by TikTok, or can you? No, you can't. Or indeed this one, which, particularly focuses on the 18 to 24s. Who do you blame for the war in Gaza? And they say 50% of them say the Israeli government. And you think, oh, isn't that dreadful? Until you actually think about it, and then you think, well, no, actually, because if I was a young person who got my information from social media, that's definitely who I'd blame as well. Because I think it's not unreasonable. I'm an old git that's not on TikTok, thankfully. Therefore, I'm not, or am I, an agent of the Chinese Communist Party? It's hard to say sometimes. But anyway, even I blame very much the Israeli government for that. And I'm willing to bet that if you looked at the numbers once again, which we haven't got to see, and I don't think we ever will do, that you'd see that quite a percentage of people in my age group who probably aren't self-hating Jews or any other category you care to do, or maybe, the kind of hand-rigging viewpoint of Matt and GB News and the rest of them, you'll probably find that it's a bit odd as well. So my guess is we will never see this again. I think somebody's made a bit of a cock-up with this, and therefore the powers that be at GB News in particular have decided that it will never be mentioned again. If that's wrong, if I'm wrong about that, I will let you know, because that's the kind of weird person that I am. But I don't think I am. I think we'll never see anything else about this again. But do be very, very wary of the Matt Goodwin school, which says things to you, and they sound perfectly reasonable until you just stop and think very briefly. And then suddenly they are utter nonsense. Sorry, Matt. Sorry, GB News. Sorry, boomers. Yes. Anyway, young people, aren't they rubbish? Discuss ad infinitum. Do have a lovely Friday. Remember, anyone young you meet, they're a bit stupid. Not like sensible old people like me.